Where do they go after they leave? It's a question that doesn't simply pass through your mind once and vanish. It lingers. It returns in the silence after a funeral, in the stillness of your room when no one's around. It hits hardest in the quiet moments, when you're holding a picture frame, tracing a familiar smile, or whispering their name into the darkness, hoping, just maybe, they'll hear you. You wonder if they're still close, if they're watching, if they know how much you miss them, not for answers necessarily, but for a kind of closeness, for reassurance that love doesn't end just because life does. This is not a question reserved for poets or mystics. It lives in all of us. It surfaces after loss, in the middle of the night when you dream of them standing at the edge of your bed, in a passing breeze that feels like a touch, in the way the light bends in a familiar corner of the house. These moments, fleeting, subtle, yet deeply charged, leave you wondering if perhaps the separation isn't as final as we were taught to believe. Because what truly haunts us is not death itself. It's the possibility that those we love are entirely gone, unreachable, erased from the story, that we'll never get another moment, never feel their presence, never hear them laugh, or see them smile again, and yet, something inside you whispers that it's not over, that the connection persists, that maybe, just maybe, they're still with you, watching, guiding, loving you in a form beyond comprehension. You might not speak of it openly, not all the time, but when you walk into their old room, or see someone who reminds you of them, the question softly rises again, do they see us? Do they know? Can they still feel our love, our sorrow, our gratitude? Across every culture and era this question has echoed into our stories, rituals and beliefs like an eternal flame that refuses to be extinguished. In ancient Egypt, they believed the Ka, the soul, traveled to the afterlife but stayed tethered to the living through memory and offering. The Chinese burned paper replicas of earthly possessions to send abundance to their ancestors. In Mexico, Dia de los Muertos celebrates not death but connection. Altars are adorned with food, photos, candles, marigolds, an open invitation for the spirits to return home even if just for one night. Even in the quiet hush of Western mourning, we still place flowers on graves, talk to the departed, imagine them looking down on us during graduations, weddings, and heartaches. We speak to the empty room as though they're still there, and maybe, in ways we don't fully understand, they are. There is something universal about the grief that comes with losing someone you love. But there's also something universal about the need to believe, no, to feel, that the relationship isn't over, that the love still flows, still breathes, even when the body doesn't. You may have felt it yourself. Maybe you walked into a room and smelled their perfume, even though no one had worn it in years. Maybe you had a dream so vivid it didn't feel like a dream at all. They were there, eyes clear, voice strong, telling you something you needed to hear. Or maybe you found an old letter or object in a place you swore you already searched a dozen times, and it appeared when you needed it most. Coincidence? That's what logic might say, that it's just your brain longing for connection, filling in the gaps left behind by loss. But what if it's something more? What if these moments are real, not imagined comfort, but echoes of an eternal presence? This longing isn't about superstition. It's about the heart trying to make sense of something the mind was never designed to explain. Death doesn't compute the way math does. It leaves too many variables unanswered. And so we feel our way through it instead, through signs, through symbols, through that subtle, unshakable knowing that they're still with us. What if you've never really been alone? Think about that for a moment. What if the eyes that once looked at you with love still do? What if the hands that once held yours still reach out in unseen ways to protect and comfort? What if the love you thought you lost never left? It only changed form. It's easy to dismiss this. In a world ruled by data and logic, there's little room for the unseen. But love has always transcended logic, and so has grief, You don't mourn data, you mourn a presence, a connection, a shared life. And perhaps it's in that moment where the veil thins, where your longing becomes a bridge instead of a wall. Some people call them signs, others call them hallucinations. Some believe in spirits, others believe in memories so powerful they echo. But regardless of what you name it, the experience is the same. Something reaches back. Something touches the soul. Something beyond time and space. Why does this matter? Because if the dead still see us, if they remain connected in some mysterious way, it changes everything. It means our love stories aren't cut short. It means we're still being watched over, guided, witnessed. It means your actions, your triumphs, your moments of breakdown and breakthrough, they're still being shared with the ones you lost. And if they can still see you, still feel your heart, what would you want them to see? Would you live differently? Would you speak to them more often? Would you feel less alone? There is a sacred power in asking this question. Not necessarily to get an answer, but to remember that the bonds we form in life are too strong, too sacred, to be undone by death. This isn't just a question about ghosts or spirits. It's about the invisible threads that stitch our lives together, the ones that don't unravel just because someone crosses to the other side. It's about the echoes of love that keep reverberating long after the last goodbye. And it's about opening your heart just a little to the possibility that even in death, love finds a way to stay. So when you feel that nudge, when a song plays that only they loved, when the wind brushes your cheek like a familiar touch, don't rush to dismiss it. Don't shut the door. Maybe it's them. Maybe the question isn't, are they watching? But are you still listening? There are moments in life when we're reminded of those we've lost, not through pictures or memories, but through something far more intangible, almost ethereal. It can happen at any time, in the most unexpected ways. And it often feels like a whisper, a fleeting moment where time feels suspended, and a familiar presence seems to brush against us, though we know the person has passed. It's as though in that brief moment the veil between worlds is pulled just slightly back, allowing us to feel the brush of something we can't quite explain. It's subtle, undeniable, and haunting. I remember the first time it happened to me. It was a crisp autumn evening. The kind of evening that feels nostalgic, the air thick with the promise of change. I had just returned home from the funeral of my grandmother, a woman who had been a quiet yet powerful force in my life. It was one of those moments when you realize how much of a presence someone truly was only after they're gone. I had barely made it through the door when it happened. A faint smell of lavender. Now, lavender had always been her scent, not just in perfumes or lotions, but in the very way she lived. Her clothes, her linen, even the scent of her house had a lavender undertone. It was a calming, almost sacred scent, one I associated with warmth, comfort, and gentle wisdom. But that night, as I stood in the entryway, it was in the air, clear as day. It wasn't a room spray or anything I could pinpoint physically, it just filled the space, wrapping around me in a way that felt so unmistakably her, so personal. I could almost hear her voice saying, "It's all right, my dear. I'm still here." I thought I was imagining it. Grief has a way of doing that, doesn't it? It colors everything, pulls you deeper into the abyss of longing and sadness, and in that space, your mind becomes fertile ground for signs and symbols. I shook my head, thinking it was a trick of my overwhelmed senses. But then, the sense stayed. It didn't dissipate, not for hours. It lingered in the room like a promise. The next day it happened again. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up, trying to return to some semblance of routine, when a song came on the radio. It was one of her favorites, one that she used to sing around the house when she thought no one was listening. The song was from a time long before I was born, and I hadn't heard it in years. I didn't even know the station I was listening to played that kind of music, yet there it was, her song, as clear as if she were standing right beside me, humming along with the words. In that moment, I froze. I couldn't move. I felt her presence in that song, in the room with me, as though she were there, sharing that moment with me, just as she had so many times before. But she wasn't physically there. She was gone. Yet there she was, her voice, her favorite song, as if to say, "I'm still here with you, you're not alone." I told myself it was coincidence, that it had to be. Grief can do strange things to the mind. It makes you look for signs, creates patterns where none may exist. But still, that scent of lavender, that song on the radio, they stayed with me, unexplainable yet undeniably real. I tried to rationalize it. It was just a part of the healing process, the mind's way of coping with the absence. But something deep within me, something primal, refused to let go of the idea that perhaps it wasn't just grief. Perhaps it was contact. Perhaps she was reaching out to me in the only way she could now, through those subtle signs, through the presence that hovered around me like a quiet embrace. The encounters didn't stop there. In the days and weeks following, there were more instances. I would find little things in odd places. A silver spoon she used to keep on her kitchen table, always in the same spot, would be moved to the counter where I never placed it. A book that had been on her nightstand for years, one she used to read to me, was found opened to a page I'd never seen before, as though it were waiting for me to read it again. These weren't big, obvious signs. They were quiet, almost imperceptible. But in the stillness of my grief they felt monumental, like breadcrumbs left along a path, a way to guide me through the fog of loss. The most surreal moment, though, came in a dream. It was the kind of dream that feels more like a memory, more vivid than any other. I was sitting at her kitchen table, just as I had so many times when I was younger, the smell of lavender still in the air, and she was there. She looked just like I remembered, her soft smile lighting up her face. And she was laughing, the same laugh that used to fill the room with warmth. She told me in that gentle way of hers that everything was going to be all right, that she was at peace, and that I should be too. When I woke up, I felt it. The feeling that she had truly visited me, not in the way the mind tricks itself into imagining things, but in a way that transcended the physical. Her presence had been as real in the dream as it had been when she was alive, and when I woke, it was as though she hadn't truly gone anywhere at all. The peace I felt in that moment stayed with me, a sense of reassurance that somehow she was still with me. I don't know if I can fully explain what happened. I don't know if I'll ever truly understand it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just a matter of grief. It was something more, a deeper spiritual connection that transcended the physical. The signs, the dreams, the subtle whispers, were they the result of an overactive mind, grieving and longing for a loved one? Or were they the subtle signs of contact, a reminder that love doesn't die with the body? Was it possible that, even in death, she had found the way to reach out to me? Is it grief? Or is it contact? This question isn't just about me, it's about all of us. The truth is, we've all experienced something like this at one point or another. Maybe you found yourself in a similar situation where you caught a fleeting scent, heard a familiar song, or felt the touch of someone long gone. It's impossible to explain away all of these instances as mere coincidence. There is a part of us that knows, that feels, that our departed loved ones don't just disappear. They leave behind something, a presence, a mark, an echo that calls out to us in the moments we need it the most. And perhaps that's the point of it all. Maybe these moments, these subtle whispers of a presence, are there to remind us that death isn't the end, that love doesn't have an expiration date, that the connections we share with others, the true unbreakable bonds of the soul, are eternal. Maybe the dead do watch the living. Maybe they find ways, through dreams, through symbols, through those inexplicable moments of connection, to reassure us that they are still with us, still present, still part of our journey. So, the next time you catch the scent of lavender or hear a song that only they loved, pause for a moment. Take a breath and ask yourself, is this just grief or is it something more? Is this just a memory or is it a message? Edgar Cayce, often referred to as the Sleeping Prophet, was a man who seemed to operate on a plane far beyond what most of us can fathom. Born in 1877 in the small town of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Cayce's life journey would take him on a path that merged the realms of physical healing, spiritual insight, and a deep understanding of the mysteries of life after death. But what set him apart from other mystics or spiritual leaders was his ability to access profound, detailed information while in a trance, a state of consciousness that rendered his body still, but his mind open to extraordinary revelations. Cayce's early life seemed relatively ordinary. He was a curious and introspective child, often showing an early affinity for nature, spirituality, and the mystical aspects of life. His remarkable abilities, however, began to emerge in his late teens. After suffering from a voice loss that medical doctors could not cure, he discovered that by placing himself into a deep trance-like state, he could not only restore his voice, but could provide detailed medical diagnoses and treatments for others. In this trance, Cayce became a vessel for what he described as universal consciousness, or a deeper, hidden knowledge. His trance readings, often detailed medical prescriptions for patients, led to astounding results, sometimes healing individuals who had been deemed beyond medical help. But as Cayce's fame grew, so did the depth of his spiritual insights. His work evolved beyond just medical readings. People began to request answers from him on a wide array of topics: health, life, death, reincarnation, and the soul. It was in these readings that Cayce began to touch on one of the most profound subjects that would captivate him for the remainder of his life: the nature of the soul and the afterlife. Cayce's approach to the afterlife was far from conventional. His readings spoke of a continuity of life beyond death, where the soul, in its essence, is eternal and unbroken. According to Cayce, when a person dies, their consciousness doesn't simply disappear. It undergoes a transition into a higher realm. Death, as he put it, was not an end but a transformation. Cayce's words about death were often a comfort to those who sought answers about the fate of loved ones who had passed. He described the soul's journey after death as one of rest, healing, and eventually reincarnation. Souls, he believed, went through different dimensions or planes of existence, experiencing levels of spiritual growth, learning, and at times waiting for a return to physical life in order to continue their soul's progression. In his readings, Cayce often spoke of the etheric body, a subtle body of energy that remains intact even after physical death. This etheric body, he suggested, was capable of moving between the physical world and other dimensions. Those who passed from the physical realm, Cayce claimed, would often continue to interact with the living world in these subtle ways, through feelings, dreams, or even through the transmission of certain messages. Souls would reside in a higher state of consciousness, able to observe the living, and sometimes offer guidance or comfort to those they left behind. He emphasized that the bonds of love, those deeply spiritual connections between individuals, continued to exist beyond the physical, and it was these bonds that allowed the deceased to maintain a sense of awareness and connection with their loved ones. But Cayce did not merely describe a passive existence for the dead. He was adamant that the soul's journey didn't stop after death. In his readings, he spoke of spiritual planes, different levels of existence that souls moved through as they ascended in their spiritual journey. Each soul, he said, had its own path to follow, which was determined by the lessons and experiences that the soul had undertaken in previous lifetimes. These readings spoke of reincarnation, where a soul, after having spent a period in the afterlife, would return to Earth to fulfill another chapter in its ongoing spiritual journey. One of Cayce's most notable teachings on the afterlife was his assertion that souls could retain awareness of their past lives and, in some cases, could even recognize their past incarnations and the lessons they had yet to learn. He spoke of a vast spiritual universe, where souls would not only continue their evolution, but could also work together. Souls in the afterlife could, Cayce believed, help those still alive, assisting with healing, offering insights, and guiding them toward their soul's intended path. Casey's perspective on this was deeply comforting to those who sought to understand how death could be viewed not as an end, but as a part of a greater cycle, a cycle where the soul's work was never truly finished. One of the most fascinating aspects of Casey's work was his ability to access this spiritual knowledge while in a trance state. When he entered his trances, he would often answer questions posed to him by the people in the room. He would describe detailed events and phenomena that he couldn't possibly have known through ordinary means, often offering advice, guidance, and predictions about both the physical and spiritual realms. These readings, recorded by stenographers, became the basis for what is now known as the Casey readings. They covered a wide range of subjects, from the mundane to the metaphysical, and were transcribed into thousands of pages that still captivate researchers, seekers, and spiritualists to this day. Casey's ability to tap into spiritual realms was not limited to healing or the afterlife. His readings also delved into the nature of the soul itself, describing it as a divine spark that was part of a greater cosmic consciousness. He spoke of the soul's journey through different lifetimes, learning lessons and progressing toward greater enlightenment. This understanding of the soul's eternal nature was not just an abstract idea for Casey, it was the lens through which he viewed life, death, and the universe. In his view, the soul was on a constant path of growth, evolution, and awakening, its ultimate goal being reunification with the divine. Perhaps one of the most compelling aspects of Casey's work was the depth of insight he was able to offer about the afterlife. While many spiritual teachings offer vague or comforting ideas about life after death, Casey's readings were filled with detailed accounts of what the soul experiences after it departs from the body. According to Casey, there is a waiting period after death, a time of reflection and healing, during which the soul is able to review its past life. The soul would then continue its spiritual journey, moving through various levels of consciousness where it could experience new growth, new learning, and new opportunities for evolution. In this way, death was not a final destination but a stepping stone on the soul's long journey back to the divine. For those left behind, Casey's words offered comfort. The deceased, he explained, would often try to communicate with their loved ones through dreams or feelings, providing subtle signs of their presence. Sometimes they would offer guidance, insight, or reassurance that they were watching over their family members. According to Casey, these interactions were not just fleeting moments of wishful thinking, they were real, spiritual occurrences that transcended the physical realm. Casey's unique ability to access these higher realms of spiritual knowledge during his trances makes him one of the most fascinating figures in the study of mysticism, spirituality, and the afterlife. His readings continue to offer profound insights into the nature of the soul, the afterlife, and the unseen connections that bind us to those who have passed beyond the veil. For many, his work has opened up new avenues for understanding death, love, and the eternal nature of the soul. And perhaps in the end, it is through his teachings that we are reminded of a simple but powerful truth. Death is not the end. It is a continuation, a step along the soul's eternal journey. In the quiet moments of reflection, when we find ourselves alone with our thoughts, we often begin to ponder the deeper questions of life. One of the most profound of these questions revolves around the nature of our existence and the unseen forces that bind us to the world. What if, beyond the physical realm that we experience with our senses, there exists an intricate network of energy, vibration, and consciousness that connects all things? What if the afterlife, the continuation of the soul, was not just a separate existence but a part of a greater vibrational universe, one in which our souls are forever intertwined, flowing through different planes of existence? This concept, while difficult to fully grasp, offers a new way of looking at the nature of reality. It challenges our conventional understanding of life and death, suggesting that the soul is not confined to the limitations of time and space, but instead exists within a vast, interconnected web of vibrational energy. In this view, life is not simply a linear progression from birth to death, but a continuous movement through different states of consciousness and existence, each governed by its own unique vibrational frequency. At the heart of this concept is the idea that our reality, and even our existence beyond death, is shaped by vibrational energy. Everything in the universe, every object, every thought, every emotion, and every soul vibrates at a certain frequency. This is not a new idea. In fact, many ancient spiritual traditions have long spoken of the importance of energy, vibration, and resonance in shaping the world around us. But it is only in more recent times that science has begun to catch up with these ancient teachings, revealing the profound truths behind the idea that we are all, in essence, energetic beings. When we look at life through the lens of vibration, we begin to see that the world is not as solid or as separate as we once thought. Instead, everything is connected, like the strings of a cosmic instrument, vibrating in harmony or dissonance depending on the frequencies at play. The physical body, in this context, is simply a temporary form that houses the soul, which itself is made of finer, more subtle energy. The body may be bound by the laws of the physical world, birth, aging, and death, but the soul, according to this view, is not bound by any of these limitations. The soul exists in a fluid, ever-evolving state, moving through different planes of existence, each with its own vibrational characteristics. In this framework, the afterlife is not a distant, separate realm, but rather a continuation of the soul's journey through different vibrational states. These states or planes are not static, but overlap, allowing the soul to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This concept, sometimes referred to as overlapping vibrational planes, suggests that death is not an abrupt transition from one state to another, but a gradual shift into a higher frequency of existence. The soul, rather than disappearing into nothingness, simply ascends to a new level of awareness, one where the boundaries between life and death are less distinct, and the soul can continue its growth and evolution. This idea of overlapping planes of existence also introduces the concept of selective awareness in the afterlife. According to this understanding, the soul retains a certain level of awareness of the physical world even after death, but this awareness is not constant or all-encompassing. Instead, the soul's attention is drawn selectively to certain people, places, or events, depending on the bonds of love and connection that were formed during its earthly existence. In other words, the deceased are not perpetually watching over us or observing our every move, but they are able to tune into our lives in moments when they are needed most. Selective awareness in this context is not a passive state. Rather, it is an active process that allows the soul to engage with the living world, offering guidance, comfort, and love when the connection between the two realms is strongest. This process is governed by the vibrational ties that were formed between souls during their earthly lives. These ties, created through love, affection, and shared experiences, transcend the boundaries of death, allowing the soul to remain connected to those it loves, even after physical separation. It is these vibrational ties that form the foundation of the soul's continuing relationship with the living. Love, in this sense, is not just an emotion or a fleeting experience. It is a powerful, enduring force that transcends the physical world. Love creates a resonance, a frequency that binds souls together, creating an unbreakable connection that cannot be severed by death. This connection allows the deceased to reach out, to communicate, and to offer comfort and support to those they left behind. This idea that love creates enduring vibrational ties between souls is one of the most profound aspects of this concept of the afterlife. It suggests that love is not just a fleeting feeling, but a powerful, eternal energy that continues to shape our lives even after death. The bond that we share with others, especially those we love, is not limited by time or space. It exists beyond the physical realm, in a dimension of consciousness that transcends the boundaries of the body. Love in this sense is not just an experience, but a force that connects us to one another on a deeper spiritual level. When we experience moments of connection with those who have passed, whether it's through a dream, a subtle sign, or a feeling of their presence, it is not just our imagination or our grief speaking. It is the resonance of the love that we shared with them, the vibrational tie that continues to exist even in their physical absence. These moments are not just memories, they are real, spiritual experiences that allow us to reconnect with the souls we love and to continue our journey together, even across the boundaries of life and death. This understanding of the afterlife offers a profound sense of comfort and hope. It suggests that death is not an end, but a continuation, a transformation of the soul's energy as it moves through different vibrational planes. The soul in this view is eternal, and the love we share with others is not confined to this lifetime. It continues to resonate across time and space, connecting us to those we have loved and lost, and allowing us to experience the ongoing presence of those who have passed. In this vibrational universe, we are never truly alone. The souls of those we love are always with us, not in a physical sense, but in the form of energy, an energy that continues to guide, comfort, and watch over us. And the love we share with them is not just a memory, it is a living, breathing force that connects us, binding us together across the boundaries of time and space. This idea of love as an enduring vibrational force is not just a comforting thought. It is a profound truth that speaks to the very essence of who we are. We are not merely physical beings limited by the confines of our bodies and the passage of time. We are energetic beings, connected to one another and to the universe through the vibrational frequencies that shape our existence. And as we move through life, we are constantly creating and reinforcing these vibrational ties, forging connections that transcend the physical world and continue to resonate long after we are gone. In the end, the vibrational universe is not just a philosophical concept or a mystical idea. It is the very fabric of reality itself. It is the force that connects us all, that shapes our experiences, and that allows us to continue our journey even beyond the boundaries of life and death. And in this universe, love is not just a fleeting emotion. It is the energy that sustains us, that connects us to one another, and that guides us through the unknown realms of existence. Throughout human history, one of the most profound and enduring questions has been, what happens after we die? This question has sparked a wide range of beliefs, rituals, and spiritual practices across different cultures and civilizations. While the specifics may vary, there is a striking commonality among them all, the belief that death is not the end of existence, but a transition, and that the connection between the living and the dead remains intact in some form. Across the world, cultures have developed intricate rituals and practices designed to honor the dead, maintain a connection with them, and ensure that the souls of the departed are treated with the respect and reverence they deserve. In ancient Egypt, the belief in an afterlife was central to their entire world view. Egyptians believed that when a person died, their soul embarked on a journey to the afterlife, a journey that was fraught with dangers and challenges. To ensure a safe passage, elaborate burial rituals were performed and the body was carefully mummified to preserve it for the journey ahead. The dead were not left to wander aimlessly. Instead, their tombs were stocked with food, tools, and other necessities to aid in their journey. Offerings were made to the gods and prayers were recited to guide the deceased safely through the trials of the afterlife. One of the most well-known practices in ancient Egypt was the weighing of the heart, a ceremony in which the soul of the deceased was judged by the god Osiris. The deceased's heart, which was thought to contain the essence of their soul, was weighed against a feather, representing truth and justice. If the heart was found to be lighter than the feather, the soul was allowed to enter the afterlife and enjoy eternal peace. If the heart was heavy with sin, however, the soul was devoured by Ammit, a fearsome creature, and the person's journey was tragically cut short. Beyond the burial rituals, the Egyptians also believed in the importance of ancestor worship. They held that the souls of the deceased could still influence the lives of the living. Rituals were performed to honor the dead and to maintain a connection with them. These rituals often took place during festivals and specific dates in the Egyptian calendar, during which families would visit the tombs of their ancestors, make offerings and recite prayers. The belief was that the spirits of the dead were always present, watching over their descendants, and that by honoring them, the living ensured their protection, guidance, and blessings. In China, ancestor worship is one of the oldest and most deeply ingrained spiritual practices. The Chinese believe that the dead continue to exist in an ancestral realm and that they maintain a strong connection with the living. The spirits of the deceased are thought to watch over their families, offering guidance and protection in exchange for respect and reverence. To honor the dead, the Chinese perform a wide variety of rituals, including the offering of food, incense, and prayers. The most significant of these rituals is the Qingming Festival, also known as Tomb Sweeping Day, which takes place in early April. During the Qingming Festival, families gather at the graves of their ancestors to clean the tombstones, offer food and tea, and burn incense and paper money as a way of ensuring that the spirits have everything they need in the afterlife. This ritual is not just about paying respects, it is about maintaining an ongoing relationship with the deceased. The offerings made during the festival are believed to nourish the spirits and help them continue their journey in the afterlife. The Chinese also have a deep belief in the concept of filial piety, which extends beyond the living. It is the duty of the living to honor, care for, and provide for their ancestors, just as they would care for their parents during their lifetimes. In Mesoamerica, the indigenous peoples of Mexico and Central America also placed great emphasis on the relationship between the living and the dead. The ancient Maya, for example, believed that death was not an end, but a transition to another world. They viewed the underworld as a place where the dead could continue to exist, and they practiced rituals to ensure that the deceased had a safe journey into this realm. Like the Egyptians, the Maya believed in the importance of offerings and rituals to help the dead on their journey. The dead were often buried with items they might need in the afterlife, such as food, weapons, and ceremonial objects. One of the most well-known Mesoamerican traditions is the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, which has its roots in the Aztec and other indigenous cultures. This holiday, celebrated primarily in Mexico and parts of Central America, is dedicated to honoring and remembering deceased loved ones. The celebration takes place on November 1st and 2nd, coinciding with the Catholic observances of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, but it is distinctly indigenous in its practices and symbolism. During Dia de los Muertos, families create altars, or ofrendas, in their homes to honor their ancestors. These altars are adorned with photos of the deceased, candles, marigolds, and offerings of food and drink. Special foods such as pan de muerto, bread of the dead, and sugar skulls are prepared, and families gather to celebrate the lives of those who have passed. The belief is that the souls of the dead return to the earthly realm during this time to be reunited with their families. The living and the dead are united in a joyous celebration of life, with music, dancing, and feasting. This ritual is a powerful reminder that death is not something to be feared, but something to be celebrated as part of the ongoing cycle of life. In many African cultures, the belief in an afterlife and the continuing presence of the deceased is central to spiritual practice. The Yoruba people of West Africa, for example, believe that the soul continues to exist after death, entering a spiritual realm where it can interact with the living. The Yoruba practice ancestor worship, where offerings and prayers are made to honor the dead and maintain a connection with them. These rituals are seen as essential for the well-being of the family and community, as the spirits of the ancestors are believed to offer guidance, protection, and blessings. In addition to ancestor worship, many African cultures believe in the power of spiritual intermediaries, such as shamans, healers, and diviners, to communicate with the spirits of the deceased. These spiritual leaders serve as conduits between the living and the dead, channeling messages from the ancestors and helping the living navigate the challenges of life. The role of the ancestor in African spirituality is not limited to mere remembrance. It is a living, active force that shapes the lives of the living through guidance, protection, and influence. What is striking in all these cultures is the central importance placed on maintaining a connection with the dead. Across Egypt, China, Mesoamerica, and Africa, there is a shared understanding that the deceased are not gone in the way that we often think. They continue to exist in some form, watching over us, guiding us, and offering us their wisdom and protection. The rituals and ceremonies designed to honor the dead serve not only as a way of paying respects, but as a means of maintaining an ongoing relationship with the deceased. These practices remind us that death is not a final separation, but rather a transition, a shift in the way we connect with those who have passed on. The global commonality in these practices speaks to a universal truth that transcends cultural boundaries, that love, memory, and connection are not bound by the physical world. The spirits of the dead continue to live on in the hearts and minds of the living, and the rituals designed to honor them help to keep that connection alive. In a world where so much is uncertain and temporary, these rituals offer a sense of continuity, a belief that we are all part of a much larger ongoing story that extends beyond the limitations of time and space. The dead may be gone from this world, but they are never truly far from us. Through these rituals, through the reverence we show, we ensure that they remain with us, alive in spirit if not in body. For much of modern history, the scientific community has dismissed any notion that the dead continue to interact with the living. The prevailing view, particularly in the field of psychology, is that experiences of contact with the deceased are simply projections of grief, emotional phenomena that arise from the mind's need to cope with loss. According to this perspective, visions, dreams, and other perceived communications with the dead are nothing more than psychological responses to the pain of mourning. They are seen as mechanisms for processing grief, not evidence of an ongoing connection between the living and the dead. Mainstream psychology tends to explain these experiences through well-established concepts like the unconscious mind, denial and projection. Grief, they argue, is a powerful force that can distort perception. When someone we love dies, our minds often struggle to accept the finality of the loss. We may unconsciously seek ways to continue the relationship, believing that the deceased is still present in some form. This, according to mainstream psychology, accounts for experiences like sensing a loved one's presence, hearing their voice in our minds, or even feeling their touch long after they are gone. These experiences are, in this view, temporary illusions brought about by our emotional and psychological needs. While this explanation has been the dominant framework for understanding such phenomena, it fails to account for the vast number of reports from people across cultures and time periods who have experienced these grief-driven projections in ways that cannot be easily explained by psychology alone. In recent years, however, a growing body of research has begun to challenge this narrow perspective, suggesting that there may be more to these experiences than simple psychological reactions. One of the most intriguing and surprising areas of research has emerged around the phenomenon known as deathbed visions, the vivid, often comforting experiences that people have shortly before their deaths. In these moments, individuals near the end of their life often report seeing deceased loved ones, spiritual beings, or even religious figures who seem to be waiting for them, guiding them toward the afterlife. These experiences are not limited to the dying person alone. Loved ones at the bedside sometimes report witnessing the same phenomena, even though they are not in the process of dying. Studies on deathbed visions have revealed that these experiences are far more common than previously thought. One such study, conducted by Dr. Elisabeth Kübler-Ross, the renowned psychiatrist and author of On Death and Dying, found that nearly 50% of patients in hospice care reported seeing deceased relatives or spiritual figures in the days or hours leading up to their death. These visions, which often appear peaceful and comforting, have been described as a form of pre-death communication. For many patients, these encounters provide a sense of peace and reassurance, as if the presence of deceased loved ones or spiritual guides is offering them comfort in their final moments. Dr. Kübler-Ross, herself a pioneer in studying the psychological stages of dying, was one of the first to acknowledge that these experiences were not simply the result of hallucinations or cognitive decline, but could represent a deeper, more meaningful phenomenon that challenged conventional understandings of death. Other research has focused on a related phenomenon known as after-death communication, ADC, experiences in which the living report perceiving messages or encounters with the deceased. These experiences often occur in dreams, visions, or even in waking states, and can involve a wide range of sensory perceptions. Hearing a loved one's voice, feeling their presence, or receiving specific messages that are often deeply meaningful. These occurrences are typically described as having a quality of vividness and reality, and those who experience them often report that they feel a profound sense of connection and comfort. While some psychologists still regard ADC experiences as mere grief projections, there is a growing body of research suggesting otherwise. Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the foremost researchers on near-death experiences and their relation to life after death, has long been an advocate for considering the possibility that death is not an end, but a transition to another realm. His groundbreaking work, Life After Life, published in 1975, brought widespread attention to the phenomenon of NDEs, in which people who have been clinically dead for a brief period report vivid, transformative experiences, such as moving through a tunnel toward a bright light, encountering deceased relatives, or experiencing a life review. Dr. Moody's work was revolutionary in that it helped shift the conversation from dismissing these phenomena as mere fantasies to seriously considering their potential as evidence of an afterlife. In the years since Moody's research, more scientists and psychologists have taken an interest in the possibility that ADCs and other similar phenomena are not just psychological byproducts of grief, but may actually be evidence of continued consciousness after death. One of the leading figures in this area of research is Dr. Julie Beischel, a prominent researcher in the field of afterlife communication. As the director of the Windbridge Research Center, Dr. Beischel has conducted extensive studies into the phenomenon of mediumship and the possibility of contact with the deceased. Through her research, she has documented compelling evidence of individuals receiving accurate and verifiable information from spirits, often through professional mediums, that could not have been known through normal means. One of Dr. Beischel's most notable findings is that many mediums, people who claim to communicate with the deceased, are able to provide specific, detailed information about the deceased person that they could not have known otherwise. For example, a medium might relay a message about a specific event or personal detail that was known only to the person receiving the message. In some cases, the information is so precise that it challenges the idea that the medium is simply reading the mind of the living or interpreting vague cues. This research raises important questions about the nature of consciousness and whether it continues after death, suggesting that the experiences of ADCs and other forms of contact may not be mere figments of the imagination, but rather genuine encounters with the deceased. Critics of this research often argue that such phenomena can be explained by psychological mechanisms such as confirmation bias or the ideomotor effect, in which the mind unconsciously interprets or manufactures experiences based on personal expectations or desires. However, the consistency and detail found in many of these accounts suggest that there may be something more at work. For example, individuals who experience ADCs often report that the messages they receive are deeply meaningful and provide them with a sense of peace or closure. This sense of comfort and reassurance is not easily explained by psychological theories alone, as it often involves specific, verifiable information that goes beyond what the living person could have known or expected. What makes the phenomenon of ADCs and deathbed visions particularly compelling is that they are reported not just by those in the midst of grief, but by a wide variety of people: patients at the end of life, individuals who have no reason to be emotionally invested in the deceased person, and even those who experience these phenomena without any recent loss. This broad spectrum of experiences raises the possibility that these encounters are not simply projections of the grieving mind, but may represent genuine contact with another realm of existence. As more research is conducted into these phenomena, the scientific community is slowly beginning to acknowledge that there may be more to the question of life after death than previously thought. While much of mainstream psychology still regards deathbed visions and ADCs as psychological artifacts, the growing body of evidence suggests that these experiences are not merely products of the grieving mind, but possibly a window into a deeper, spiritual truth about the continuity of consciousness. Researchers like Raymond Moody and Julie Beischel, along with countless others in the field of afterlife studies, are beginning to shed light on the possibility that the soul, consciousness, or spirit may continue beyond the physical death of the body, and that the bonds we share with our loved ones do not end with their passing. The scientific dismissal of these phenomena is not necessarily a refusal to acknowledge the unknown, but rather a reflection of our limited understanding of the complexities of consciousness and the afterlife. However, as research continues, and as more individuals report experiences of contact with the deceased, we may find that the boundaries between life and death are not as rigid as we once believed. The cracks in the scientific dismissal of these phenomena are beginning to appear, and the answers to the questions we've been asking for centuries may soon be within our reach. As we approach the final moments of our lives, there is a mysterious threshold, a space where life and death seem to blend together, where the boundaries between the living world and the afterlife become faint and indistinct. For many, this is not just a passage of physical transition, but a profound and spiritual experience. Hospice workers, caregivers, and family members who have witnessed the process of dying often speak of a peculiar phenomenon. In the hours and days before death, the dying seem to awaken to something beyond the physical realm. They begin to speak of visions, of encounters with unseen presences, and of vivid dreams that carry a sense of clarity and peace. These moments, which have been described as lucid awakenings, are often filled with encounters that feel tangible, even though they are not seen or heard by anyone else in the room. One of the most common stories reported by hospice workers involves patients who, in the final days of their lives, suddenly appear to come alive in a way that seems beyond normal consciousness. It's as though, in their last moments, the dying person is no longer fully tethered to the physical world. They may become more alert and engaged, speaking to people who are not physically present, loved ones who have passed away, or spiritual figures they describe as waiting for them. These experiences are often accompanied by a deep sense of calm or serenity, as though the patient has been given a glimpse of the world beyond, and is no longer afraid of the transition they are about to undergo. The dying frequently speak of seeing loved ones, many of whom have been gone for years, standing beside them or beckoning them to come. These visions are often described as incredibly vivid, so much so that the dying person may speak to these unseen visitors as though they are right there in the room, fully present and real. One hospice nurse recalls a patient just hours before passing who suddenly smiled and greeted her deceased husband, who had passed away decades earlier. "He's here," the patient said, reaching out as if to embrace him. For those who witnessed these final moments, these visions seem too real to be mere hallucinations or the product of a dying brain. The vividness and clarity of the experiences suggest that the dying person is not simply confused or disoriented. They are perceiving something beyond ordinary reality. This phenomenon has been reported by countless caregivers and family members across cultures and time periods. The dying often speak of going home or returning to a place of peace, with a sense of relief and anticipation. It is as if they have received an invitation to step beyond the veil, and they are no longer burdened by the fear of death. Instead, there is a feeling of readiness, a sense that the moment of departure is not an end, but a continuation of something far greater. For those who experience these moments, the transition feels less like an abrupt end and more like a peaceful crossing into a new realm. Hospice workers who witness death on a daily basis have become increasingly aware of the threshold space where life and death overlap. This is not just a physical space, it is a spiritual one, a place where the dying seem to exist in both worlds at once. Some nurses describe a subtle shift in energy when someone is nearing the end of their life. It's as if the patient becomes more attuned to something beyond the physical realm, and the lines between the material world and the spiritual world begin to blur. The moment before departure is often described as a time when the soul is preparing to leave its earthly body, when the individual begins to transition into a higher state of consciousness. This threshold space, sometimes referred to as the window or the thin veil, is a place of profound significance, a space in which the dying are often able to experience glimpses of what lies beyond. In these final moments, The dying may speak to invisible visitors or recount conversations with loved ones who have already passed on. These encounters are often described as comforting, peaceful, and deeply spiritual. One common experience is the sudden presence of deceased family members who appear to be waiting to escort the dying person to the afterlife. These visitors are sometimes described as standing by the bed, smiling, or even holding out their hands, inviting the dying individual to cross over. Some people describe seeing a bright light or a beautiful welcoming place which they perceive as a gateway to the afterlife. For many, these visions are accompanied by an overwhelming sense of peace, as though the person is about to embark on a journey that is long awaited and filled with love. For those who have been by the bedside of a dying loved one, these moments can be deeply moving and profound. It's as if the person is no longer afraid, no longer in pain, and no longer bound by the limitations of their physical body. Instead, they seem to be embracing the transition with an open heart, ready to move on to the next phase of their existence. These final moments of life are often marked by a sense of calm acceptance, a letting go of the old self, and an embracing of the unknown. Some researchers have studied these experiences in an effort to understand what happens during the final moments of life. Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the foremost researchers on near-death experiences, NDEs, has written extensively about the moments leading up to death, as well as the experiences of those who have had NDEs. According to his research, many individuals who have near-death experiences report similar themes: a sense of peace, an encounter with deceased loved ones, and a journey toward a light. These experiences often occur during the period when the person is clinically dead, yet their consciousness seems to continue on, perceiving a world beyond the physical. These NDEs challenge our traditional understanding of death, suggesting that consciousness may continue after the body has ceased to function. Moody's work has helped to shift the conversation about death from a final, irreversible end to a potential transition into another form of existence. In addition to Moody's research, there have been other studies conducted on the experiences of those who are nearing death. One such study, led by Dr. Peter Fenwick, a neuropsychiatrist who has studied the dying process extensively, found that many patients who are nearing the end of life report vivid and meaningful visions. Some of these visions involve encounters with deceased relatives, while others involve experiences of spiritual significance, such as the sense of moving through a tunnel toward a bright light. Fenwick's research suggests that these experiences are not the result of hallucinations or brain malfunction, but rather a part of the dying process that is still poorly understood by modern science. The question of what the dying experience in their final moments remains one of the great mysteries of life. While some may dismiss these experiences as the product of a brain struggling to shut down, the consistency and profundity of these encounters raise questions about the true nature of death. The dying often describe a feeling of being surrounded by love, comfort, and reassurance, an experience that suggests that death is not something to fear, but something to embrace. These moments provide a glimpse into the possibility that the process of dying is not an end, but a continuation of the soul's journey, one that is filled with peace, light, and the love of those who have gone before. As the dying approach the threshold of death, they may leave behind messages, insights, or even signs that offer comfort to the living. These final moments can be a time of profound clarity, a time when the dying person is able to experience something beyond the physical world, a space where the veil between life and death is thin, and the soul begins to move toward its next destination. And for those who witness it, these moments can be a reminder that death is not an end but a passage, one that is filled with beauty, grace, and the possibility of something greater. Shared death experiences, SDEs, are a fascinating and deeply mysterious phenomenon, one that has intrigued both spiritual seekers and scientists alike. These experiences occur when individuals who are not themselves dying report witnessing the crossing over of a loved one or another person, experiencing the death process in some tangible way, even though they are not physically near death themselves. Unlike typical near-death experiences, NDEs, which are felt by the person who has clinically died, Shared death experiences are witnessed by healthy individuals, family members, friends, or even bystanders, who are present as someone transitions from life to death. These experiences often involve vivid visions, sensations, or feelings of being part of the dying person's journey, raising profound questions about the nature of consciousness, reality, and the boundary between life and death. A shared death experience is not just a fleeting vision or an ordinary dream. It often involves a deep sense of connection to the person who is dying, with the witness feeling that they are spiritually or emotionally part of the process. The people who experience SDEs often report seeing, hearing, or feeling things that cannot be easily explained, such as the sight of the deceased moving toward a light, hearing their loved one call out to them from the other side, or feeling a profound sense of peace as the soul makes its final departure. These experiences can be overwhelming and deeply moving, with many witnesses describing the encounter as spiritually transformative, leaving them with a lasting sense of connection to the departed and a new understanding of death. One of the most compelling accounts of a shared death experience comes from a woman named Susan, whose story has been documented by Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the foremost researchers of near-death and shared death experiences. Susan was present when her mother, who had been ill for some time, was approaching her final moments. As her mother's condition worsened, Susan found herself at the bedside, holding her mother's hand, praying for comfort. At that moment, Susan experienced something she could not explain. She reported feeling as though she was moving with her mother through a tunnel of light, along with a sense of immense peace and serenity. It wasn't as if she was physically dying. She remained fully conscious and aware, but she felt as though she was being drawn into the same spiritual space as her mother. Her mother, she said, seemed to be leading her toward something, and she could hear her mother's voice calling out to her, as if inviting her to join her on this sacred journey. Susan wasn't the only person to experience this phenomenon. Her father, who was also present at the time, reported seeing similar events, including witnessing his wife being enveloped in light as she passed. Both Susan and her father had the distinct feeling that they were witnessing the crossing over in a way that was shared. Even though they were not physically dying themselves, they felt profoundly connected to the experience, as though they had been granted access to a sacred realm at the moment of their loved one's death. These shared death experiences often involve sensations that go beyond just visual or auditory experiences. Many witnesses describe feeling a sudden shift in energy in the room, an overwhelming sense of peace, love, or even an intense feeling of the presence of the deceased, as though they are still with them. Some witnesses report having their own physical sensations that mirror those of the dying person, such as feeling the sensation of floating, or having their body go limp, as if they too were making the transition from life to death. This phenomenon often leaves witnesses feeling both awed and transformed, as they are shown a glimpse of what they believe to be the profound mystery of death. These experiences raise an essential question. How can something so intensely shared be explained by one person's mind? After all, the healthy individuals who experience SDEs are not physically dying, nor are they directly involved in the process of the soul's departure. How then can they witness and feel these experiences so vividly? One possibility that is often considered in scientific circles is that SDEs are a kind of projection, a psychological or emotional reaction to the intense grief and loss of a loved one. In other words, the person who is witnessing the event may be experiencing a sort of empathic connection to the dying person, where their mind creates vivid imagery and sensations based on their own emotional state. However, this explanation fails to account for the consistency of these experiences, particularly when witnesses describe specific details that they could not have known about the death process. For example, some individuals who have had SDEs report seeing the deceased person interact with spiritual beings or receive specific messages from beyond, all of which seem to occur in real time, outside of the witness's mind. These events are often described as being more vivid and detailed than anything a grieving person could conjure up in their imagination. There are also numerous accounts in which the individual who is witnessing the death process describes the exact timing or circumstances of the passing before it occurs, suggesting that their experience is not simply a reflection of their personal grief, but something that is happening outside of their immediate control. Some researchers have suggested that the experience of shared death may have to do with the concept of a collective consciousness, an idea that consciousness is not confined to the individual, but rather exists as part of a greater shared field of awareness. In this view, the consciousness of the dying person and the witness may become connected in a deeper, non-local way, transcending the boundaries of the physical body. This connection could allow the witness to perceive the death process in real time, much like how one might experience a deep emotional connection with another person, even if they are far away. The boundaries of the self, in this case, are temporarily dissolved, allowing for the experience of a shared spiritual event. Dr. Raymond Moody's work on near-death experiences and shared death experiences has been instrumental in advancing the understanding of these phenomena. In his books and research, Dr. Moody has collected numerous accounts of SDEs, documenting how these experiences often mirror the themes of near-death experiences: encounters with light, spiritual beings, and a sense of peace and release from pain. His research suggests that these shared experiences may represent a glimpse into a greater reality, a reality that exists beyond the physical world and is accessible to those who are intimately connected to the dying process. Another researcher who has made significant contributions to the study of SDEs is Dr. Bruce Greyson, a psychiatrist and professor of psychiatry who has spent decades studying near-death experiences and their psychological and physiological effects. Dr. Greyson has suggested that these experiences challenge the traditional understanding of consciousness, implying that consciousness may not be confined to the brain and the body. Instead, consciousness may exist independently, allowing individuals to experience events outside of their physical reality, such as shared death experiences. One of the most remarkable aspects of shared death experiences is how they seem to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. The witnesses of these experiences often report that they feel a deep, unexplainable connection with the person who has passed on. In some cases, the experience leads to profound changes in the witnesses' beliefs, opening them up to the possibility that death is not the end, but rather a transition into another realm. Many individuals who have witnessed the death process in this way report a sense of peace, understanding, and a renewed connection to their loved ones, even after they have passed. These experiences offer a comforting reminder that death may not be a final separation, but a continuation of an ongoing journey, one that transcends the physical realm and unites all souls, both living and dead. The question remains: how can something shared be explained by just one person's brain? If consciousness exists beyond the individual, as some researchers suggest, then perhaps these experiences are a window into a larger, interconnected reality. A reality where the lines between life and death, self and other, are not as rigid as we once thought. The phenomenon of shared death experiences may offer a glimpse into a more expansive understanding of life, death, and consciousness, one that challenges our conventional understanding and invites us to explore the mysteries of the soul. There is something deeply profound about the connections we form in life, especially the bonds of love that tie us to one another. These relationships, whether with family, friends, or even soulmates, often feel as if they transcend the physical realm. At times, it feels as though there is a deeper, invisible thread that links us together, one that cannot be broken by time, distance, or even death. For many, this unspoken connection is a source of comfort, especially after a loved one has passed. The idea that the love we share with others can leave an imprint on our souls, one that extends beyond the boundaries of the physical world, is a concept that has been explored by many spiritual traditions throughout history. One of the most intriguing perspectives on this comes from the teachings of Edgar Cayce, who spoke extensively about the nature of soul groups, karmic ties, and the enduring power of love. Cayce's readings often spoke of the idea that each soul is part of a larger group, what he referred to as a soul group. These groups are made up of souls that have shared past lives together, and their paths often cross again and again in future incarnations. In Casey's view, souls are not isolated entities. Rather, they are part of a vast, interconnected web of consciousness that spans across time and space. When we form deep relationships with others, whether through family, friendship, or romantic connection, we are often reconnecting with souls we have known before. These soul groups are not only a means of learning and growth, but they are also a way for souls to work through their karmic lessons, those lessons that are carried forward from previous lives, often unresolved, that need to be addressed for the soul's evolution. One of the most powerful aspects of Casey's teachings on soul groups was his assertion that love is the primary force that binds these souls together. Love, in this view, is not just an emotion or a fleeting feeling. It is a potent, energetic force that transcends the physical world. This bond of love, Casey suggested, creates an imprint on the soul, a kind of spiritual signature that remains intact even after death. In fact, the strength of the love between souls is so profound that it is not bound by the limitations of time or space. When one soul passes from the physical realm, the bond of love they shared with others continues to endure. This bond can, in many cases, even allow souls to remain connected after death, continuing to offer guidance, support, and protection to those they left behind. This idea of love as an enduring force is particularly significant when we consider the way it transcends death. In many spiritual traditions, there is a belief that the soul is eternal, that it continues on after the physical body dies, carrying with it the lessons, memories, and experiences of its earthly journey. But Casey's teachings go a step further, suggesting that the bond of love between souls remains a powerful and living force, even in the afterlife. For Casey, love wasn't just a transient experience that ended with death. It was an energy that continues to resonate, allowing the souls of the deceased to remain near, to help, and to guide those they have left behind. This perspective challenges the conventional understanding of death as a permanent separation. While many people view death as a final goodbye, Casey's readings suggest that death is not an ending but a transformation, a shift in the soul's journey. The soul may leave the physical body, but the bond of love it shares with others continues to endure. The souls of the deceased, especially those with whom we have deep karmic connections, may continue to influence our lives in subtle yet powerful ways. This idea aligns with the many reports of people experiencing a sense of their deceased loved ones still being present in their lives, offering comfort, guidance, and even protection. These encounters, often described as signs or messages from the deceased, may take the form of dreams, visions, or inexplicable occurrences that seem to carry the imprint of the deceased person's presence. But the enduring bond of love doesn't only manifest in ways that bring comfort. It can also serve as a guiding force, helping the living to navigate life's challenges. The souls of those we have loved may remain near us, not to haunt us, but to help us. In many spiritual traditions, there is a belief that the deceased can become protectors or guides for the living, offering wisdom or insight from a higher perspective. This idea resonates with Casey's teachings, which suggested that some souls, especially those who were deeply connected to us in life, may stay near us after death, watching over us, offering advice, or helping us to fulfill our own spiritual journey. In Casey's view, this connection isn't based on attachment or clinging to the physical world, but rather on love's continued evolution. The souls that stay near to help are not doing so out of a sense of possessiveness or fear of separation. Instead, they remain connected because their bond of love transcends the limitations of the physical body. These souls are no longer bound by earthly concerns or attachments, but are able to operate from a higher state of consciousness, where they can offer insight, guidance, and protection without being confined by the boundaries of time and space. This perspective also suggests that the deceased are not necessarily stuck in the afterlife, as is often portrayed in popular culture. They are not lingering, haunted by unfinished business or unfulfilled desires. Instead, they are evolving, just as the living are. In Casey's readings, the afterlife is not a static realm, but a dynamic space where souls continue to grow, learn, and contribute to the larger collective consciousness. The souls that remain near to help are not stagnant or trapped. They are part of an ongoing process of spiritual evolution that is meant to aid both the deceased and the living. The idea that some souls remain near to help rather than haunt challenges the typical portrayal of the afterlife in many religious and cultural traditions. While many believe in the existence of hauntings, or restless spirits, Casey's readings suggest that the soul's journey doesn't end in such darkness. Instead, those who pass on with love in their hearts are able to continue their work in a way that is both compassionate and empowering for the living. Far from being trapped or seeking closure, these souls are free to continue guiding, helping, and supporting their loved ones from the other side. This is a deeply comforting idea, one that reframes death as not a separation, but a continuation of the bond between souls. It suggests that the love we share with others is not confined to the physical world. It is something eternal, something that transcends even death itself. The souls we love may leave their earthly bodies, but they never truly leave us. The connection remains, and through the enduring bond of love, we are forever linked, no matter where we are in our journey. In this way, love becomes not only a force that unites us in life, but also a force that transcends death, continuing to shape our lives long after our loved ones have passed. This idea invites us to see death not as an end, but as part of a much larger, ongoing spiritual journey. A journey where love is the force that binds us all together, guiding us and supporting us, not just through life, but through the beyond. The bond that doesn't break is not just a comforting idea, it is a profound spiritual truth, that love, once created, can never truly be severed. It endures across lifetimes, across death, and across all the spaces in between. There are moments in life when the weight of grief becomes so heavy that it seems as if the very air around us is thick with sorrow. In these times, when we find ourselves alone with our thoughts, it is easy to feel as though we are completely isolated, as if the universe has withdrawn and left us in a space where only our pain exists. In these deep, dark moments, the absence of a loved one feels so final, so absolute. We miss them in a way that feels tangible, as though their absence is a physical space in the room, a gap that nothing can fill. It is in these times, however, that a curious thing happens. Sometimes, when we least expect it, we feel as though we are not entirely alone. Grief has a way of pulling us into ourselves, shutting us off from the world around us. Yet, paradoxically, it is also in these moments of profound sorrow that we begin to feel something more. It might begin as a fleeting sensation, a whisper of presence, something that can't quite be explained, a subtle warmth that doesn't come from the room itself, a faint scent that reminds us of them, or a dream so vivid and real that it feels as though the person we've lost is standing right next to us. These experiences often feel so real, so undeniable, that they leave us wondering, is it possible that they're still here, watching over us, even though we can no longer see them? The sense of presence that we feel in our moments of grief may be more common than we think. It's not unusual for people who are mourning to report experiencing moments where they feel as though their loved one is still with them. It could be a brief sensation of them standing nearby, a sudden clarity in a moment of confusion, or a moment of guidance that arrives when we need it most. These aren't always dramatic occurrences. Sometimes they are so subtle that they might go unnoticed unless we're paying close attention. It's the sudden feeling of comfort when everything feels chaotic, the inexplicable knowing when we're faced with a difficult decision, or a sense of peace that washes over us even in the midst of our pain. These experiences are often dismissed as mere coincidence or figments of the imagination, but for those who have experienced them, they are far from ordinary. In fact, many cultures and spiritual traditions hold the belief that death does not sever the connection between the living and the dead, but rather that it transforms the relationship into something more subtle and invisible. Some traditions speak of the deceased watching over their loved ones from the afterlife, guiding them through difficult moments, offering reassurance, or even sending signs to let them know they are still present. These signs, which often appear as coincidences, synchronicities, or fleeting moments of connection, are seen not as random events but as messages from the other side, a way for the departed to show that they are still present in some form, still aware of our struggles, and still offering their love and protection. It's fascinating to think about the ways in which our loved ones might be able to perceive us even after their departure. While we may feel cut off from them, isolated in our grief, they may in fact be closer to us than we think. The idea that the deceased can remain aware of the living and even offer guidance, comfort, or protection is one that spans many cultures and spiritual teachings. From the ancient Egyptians, who believed that the deceased continued to influence the lives of the living, to more modern spiritual traditions that speak of ancestors watching over their descendants, the concept of ongoing connection between the living and the dead is a widespread one. But what if the truth of this connection is even more profound than we realize? What if in some way those we love are watching us, not from some distant realm, but from a place just beyond our perception? What if we're not alone, but we just don't see them? In a world where we are taught to rely on our senses for understanding reality, it can be difficult to accept that there might be more to existence than what we can see, hear, and touch. But what if the barrier between the living and the deceased isn't as firm as we've been led to believe? What if the sense of isolation we feel in our grief is not because they are truly gone, but because the way we perceive reality is limited? The presence of our loved ones, though invisible to us, may be just as real as the air we breathe or the earth beneath our feet. They may be closer than we think, merely separated by a veil that we cannot see through. A veil that allows us to live our lives, to grow, to experience the material world, while they continue to exist in a different, yet somehow parallel dimension. The paradox of our grief is that, while we may feel the absence of our loved ones more acutely than ever before, it is precisely in these moments of longing and sorrow that we may be most attuned to the presence of their spirit. Grief has a way of opening us up, of stripping away the layers of distraction that usually cloud our perception. In our sorrow, we are vulnerable, and it is in this vulnerability that we may begin to sense something beyond ourselves. We may begin to feel the comfort of a familiar presence, the warmth of a hand on our shoulder, the reassurance that we are not truly alone, even in our deepest moments of sorrow. One of the most striking aspects of these experiences is the synchronicities that often accompany them. A sudden memory triggered by a scent or a song, a phone call from someone we hadn't spoken to in years, just when we needed to hear from them most. An unexpected encounter that seems perfectly timed, as if orchestrated by some unseen hand. These events can feel like coincidences at first, but the more we experience them, the more we begin to wonder. Could these be signs? Could they be the subtle ways in which our loved ones are reaching out to us, letting us know that they are still aware of us, still part of our lives, even if we can't see them? For those who have had these experiences, the sense of connection to the departed is not just a comforting thought, it is a reality that transcends the limitations of the physical world. These experiences defy rational explanation, and yet they leave a lasting impression that cannot be easily dismissed. The idea that we are never truly alone, that the love we share with others does not end with death, is a deeply reassuring one. In our darkest moments, when we feel most isolated and lost, the presence of a loved one, felt as a memory, a sign, or a fleeting moment of connection, can offer us a sense of peace that words cannot fully describe. But perhaps the most profound realization that comes from these experiences is the understanding that our loved ones, in their own way, are still with us. They may not be physically present, but they are not gone. The love we shared with them has not disappeared. It continues to exist, woven into the fabric of our lives, carried in our hearts and memories. They may not be able to speak to us in the way they once did, but they are still aware of us, still watching over us, still part of our journey. In the quiet moments of sorrow, when we feel the weight of their absence most keenly, we are reminded that we are never truly alone. The presence of those we love may be more common than we think, and while we may not always see them, it's comforting to believe that they may, in fact, see us. The question of why souls might choose to remain connected with the living after death is one that stirs the imagination and invites contemplation about the nature of existence and the dynamics of the soul. In many spiritual traditions, death is seen not as a final end but as a transformation, a transition into a different state of being where the soul is freed from its earthly body. However, the idea that souls continue to play an active role in the lives of those they leave behind is a deeply intriguing concept, one that raises profound questions about the nature of love, connection, and spiritual evolution. What purpose could there be for souls to remain connected to the living? Could it be that these souls are not only watching over us, but actively participating in our journeys, offering us guidance, protection, and support? And perhaps most profoundly, is it possible that they influence key decisions in our lives, steering us toward paths that will help us fulfill our highest potential? One of the most common reasons given for why souls might choose to stay connected with the living is the idea of healing. Death, despite being a natural part of life, often leaves behind unresolved feelings, grief, and unhealed wounds. These emotional and spiritual scars can be as burdensome as physical injuries, and they often remain with the living long after the loved one has passed. In many cases, the surviving individuals may feel a sense of incompleteness, as though there is something left unsaid, something unfinished, between them and the deceased. The bond of love that exists between the living and the dead may be so strong that it compels the soul to remain near, offering healing to both itself and the loved one it left behind. This healing process is not necessarily an instant one. It can take time, especially if there are deep-seated emotional wounds or unresolved conflicts. Souls in their afterlife state may have a greater awareness of these unresolved emotions and the effect they have on the living. It is possible that these souls, through their continued connection, can help their loved ones work through the pain and come to terms with their grief. Some spiritual traditions speak of the soul contract, the idea that before incarnating, souls make agreements to help one another along their journeys. It is possible that even in death, these agreements remain in place, allowing the deceased to offer healing, comfort, and resolution to those they left behind. The healing process might manifest in different ways. It could appear as a dream, where the departed loved one comes to offer comfort or closure. In some cases, individuals may feel an overwhelming sense of peace after experiencing a moment of connection with the deceased, as though the pain of loss has been alleviated. Alternatively, the deceased might help the living resolve emotional turmoil by guiding them toward forgiveness, either of themselves or others. This process of healing, facilitated by the deceased, is not just about easing the pain of loss. It's about restoring balance and harmony in the lives of those left behind. This healing connection may allow both the soul of the deceased and the living to evolve and grow spiritually. Another purpose for souls to remain connected with the living after death may be related to completion. In many spiritual philosophies, the soul's journey is viewed as an ongoing process of learning and growth, with each lifetime offering opportunities for the soul to evolve. However, there are times when that evolution may be interrupted or incomplete due to unresolved karma, unfinished business, or unfulfilled potential. Some believe that souls are not truly at peace until they have addressed these issues, which may involve revisiting relationships, healing old wounds, or resolving conflicts from their past lives. The idea of souls returning to help complete unfinished business suggests that the soul's journey does not end with physical death, but continues in a way that transcends individual lifetimes. The souls of the deceased may remain with the living, offering guidance and assistance in order to help both themselves and their loved ones fulfill their spiritual goals. This could be seen as an act of service, as the soul strives to help those it loves reach a higher level of understanding, self-realization, or spiritual growth. Just as we are often called to help others during our lifetime, the soul may feel a deep sense of responsibility to remain close to those it has loved, ensuring that they are able to heal, grow and complete the work they were meant to do in this life. Resurrection is another potential reason why souls may choose to remain connected to the living. Many people who have experienced contact with deceased loved ones report feeling a sense of protection, as though the deceased are watching over them, guiding them through difficult circumstances, and keeping them safe from harm. This sense of protection is often felt in moments of vulnerability, such as during times of crisis or when the individual is facing a life-altering decision. The departed soul may act as a spiritual guardian, offering comfort and reassurance in the form of signs, messages, or moments of clarity. The idea that souls act as protectors is deeply rooted in many cultural and spiritual traditions. In some belief systems, ancestors are seen as protectors of the family, their spirits continuing to watch over their descendants long after they have passed. The souls of deceased loved ones may act as spiritual guardians, offering guidance and protection to help their loved ones navigate life's challenges. This sense of protection can be especially powerful in times of grief, as it reassures the living that they are not alone, that they are being cared for and watched over by those they love, even in the absence of their physical presence. Perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects of the connection between the living and the dead is the idea that the departed may influence key life decisions. Many individuals who have experienced what is known as after-death communication, ADC, report receiving guidance from deceased loved ones, often at crucial junctures in their lives. This guidance may come in the form of a dream, a feeling of reassurance, or even a sudden insight or inspiration that seems to come from nowhere. The deceased may offer advice on relationships, career choices, or other important life decisions, helping the living to navigate challenging situations or find a sense of purpose. This idea that the deceased can influence the living, particularly when it comes to making life-altering decisions, suggests that the bond between souls is not only about emotional support or closure, but also about helping each other fulfill the purpose of their journey. The connection between the living and the dead then can be seen as a two-way relationship, one in which the deceased continue to offer wisdom and guidance, helping their loved ones move forward in life with a sense of clarity and direction. The guidance provided by the departed may not always be direct or obvious, but it can manifest in ways that are deeply meaningful and transformative. The idea that souls remain connected after death, helping with healing, completion, protection, and guidance, challenges the traditional view of death as a final, irreversible separation. Instead, it suggests that the connection between the living and the dead is not bound by the limitations of time and space. Love, the most powerful force in the universe, creates a bond that transcends death, allowing souls to remain intertwined, offering support and guidance even after they have left their physical bodies. Whether through dreams, signs, or feelings of presence, the departed may continue to influence our lives in ways that we cannot fully understand, helping us navigate the complexities of existence and guiding us toward our highest potential. The connection that death cannot sever is one that exists beyond the physical realm, enduring as a testament to the power of love, and reminding us that even in death, we are never truly alone. For centuries, humanity has viewed death as an absolute separation, an end to our connection with those we have loved, a definitive line drawn between the living and the deceased. This understanding of death as an irreversible divide has shaped much of our grief, our mourning rituals, and our philosophical and spiritual beliefs. It's a concept ingrained in our minds. When someone dies, they are gone. No more conversations, no more shared moments. The bond is severed and we are left to continue our lives in the absence of their physical presence. But what if this idea of separation, of total departure, is not the truth? What if death is not the definitive end that we have been taught to believe, but rather a transition, a shift, and an opening into something beyond the limitations of space and time? This idea challenges much of what we've been conditioned to think about life and death, but in recent years quantum physics has introduced us to a radically different way of looking at the nature of reality. one that offers profound insights into how we might begin to understand life, death, and consciousness. Concepts like quantum entanglement and non-locality suggest that the universe is far more interconnected and fluid than we once thought. These ideas, while rooted in the physical sciences, offer fascinating metaphors for the soul and its potential existence beyond the physical body. Quantum entanglement is one of the most mind-bending concepts in modern physics. It refers to a phenomenon where two particles become so deeply linked that their states are directly connected no matter how far apart they are. When one particle is affected, the other particle responds instantaneously, regardless of the distance between them. This spooky action at a distance, as Albert Einstein famously called it, suggests that particles do not exist in isolation, but are instead interconnected in ways that defy our classical understanding of the universe. It's as if the particles are part of a single, unified system, with no real distinction between where one ends and the other begins. At first glance, this may seem like a purely scientific concept, with no bearing on our day-to-day lives or spiritual beliefs. However, when we apply this idea to the nature of consciousness and the soul, it offers an intriguing perspective. If particles can be so deeply connected that they influence one another across vast distances, might it be possible that the soul, too, is part of a greater interconnected system, a kind of cosmic entanglement? In this model, the soul is not a separate, isolated entity bound by the physical body, but is instead a fundamental part of a vast, interconnected web of consciousness that transcends space and time. The death of the body might not mean the death of the soul, but rather a shift in its energy, moving from one form of existence to another, while remaining connected to the living world in ways we may not yet fully understand. Non-locality, another concept from quantum physics, further deepens this idea. Non-locality refers to the idea that particles can be connected in such a way that their state is not confined to a specific location in space. In other words, their properties are not bound to any particular point in space-time, and they can exist simultaneously in multiple locations, defying the traditional boundaries of space. This concept challenges our conventional understanding of how matter and energy behave, suggesting that the universe is not made up of isolated, separate entities, but rather is a vast, interconnected whole. The implications of this are profound. What if consciousness itself is not localized to the body or brain, but instead is a non-local phenomenon that exists beyond the constraints of physical reality? If we consider the soul as a form of non-local consciousness, this offers a radically different way of understanding life and death. The soul, in this view, is not confined to the physical body, but is part of a much larger interconnected field of consciousness. When the body dies, the soul does not simply disappear or cease to exist. Instead, it may transition to a different state, but it remains part of the greater whole. It is unbound by space or time, able to exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions and realities. In this model, death becomes less of an end and more of a transformation, a shift in consciousness from one form of existence to another. The soul may leave the body, but it does not depart entirely. Instead, it may remain connected to the living, offering guidance, love, and support from a higher state of awareness. The idea that consciousness is non-local and unbound by space or time challenges the traditional view of death as a permanent separation. In many spiritual traditions, there is a belief that death is not the end, but rather a continuation of the soul's journey. This perspective aligns with the concept of the soul as non-local consciousness. If the soul is not bound by the physical body, then it makes sense that it would not be bound by death either. The death of the body may mark the end of one phase of existence, but it does not necessarily mean the end of the soul's presence in our lives. Instead, the soul may continue to exist in a different form, maintaining its connection to the living world in ways that we may not fully understand. This view also challenges the idea that death is an absolute or final event. We often think of death as a clean break, a line drawn between the living and the dead, a permanent separation that cannot be crossed. But if consciousness is non-local, then perhaps death is not so much an ending as it is a transition into a different state. The soul, in this model, does not cease to exist when the body dies. Rather, it moves into another form of being, one that is not constrained by the physical world. In this sense, death becomes not a permanent departure, but a shift into a different realm of existence, one that exists alongside our own, beyond the limitations of time and space. The concept of the soul as non-local consciousness also opens up new possibilities for understanding the ways in which the living and the dead are connected. If the soul is not confined to the physical body, then it follows that the connection between the living and the deceased may be much stronger than we realize. The bond of love and connection that exists between souls may not be severed by death. Instead, it may continue to exist across the boundaries of space and time. The deceased may not be physically present, but their consciousness, unbound and non-local, may continue to observe, guide, and protect those they left behind. This understanding of death as a transition rather than an absolute separation offers profound comfort to those who are grieving. It suggests that the bonds of love we share with those we have lost are not broken by death but continue to exist in a different form. The deceased are not gone forever. They may simply exist in a different state of consciousness, one that is beyond our immediate perception but still deeply connected to us. In this view, death becomes less of a tragedy and more of a transformation, one that allows the soul to evolve and continue its journey while remaining forever intertwined with those it has loved. The illusion of separation between the living and the dead is one of the greatest sources of grief and suffering. We believe that when someone dies, they are gone, that the connection between us is lost, and that we must carry on without them. But if consciousness is non-local, if the soul is unbound by time and space, then perhaps the separation we feel is an illusion. The soul, like the particles in quantum entanglement, may still be connected to us, despite the apparent distance between us and the deceased. The love and bond we share may transcend the physical world, continuing to exist in a realm beyond our perception. In this way, death is not a final separation, but a transformation, a shift in consciousness that allows the soul to continue its journey while still remaining connected to those it has loved. The illusion of separation is just that, an illusion, created by the limits of our perception, and in the grander scheme of things it may be the connections between us, both living and dead, that define the true nature of existence. The notion that the deceased might still be aware of us, that they might continue to watch over us and be a part of our lives even after they've passed, fundamentally alters the way we perceive our existence and the choices we make. It forces us to confront the deeper questions of how we live and what it means to live authentically. If those we love can still witness our actions, hear our words, and feel our emotions, how does that affect the way we show up in the world? How does it shape our behavior toward others and ourselves? It calls us to question our values and whether we are living in a way that we would be proud of if those we've lost were still present. If the dead can see us, this awareness invites us to live with more integrity. Integrity is the alignment between our inner values and our outward actions, and knowing that the departed might be witnessing our decisions brings a new level of accountability to our lives. The idea that our loved ones, whether parents, spouses, or friends, might still be watching over us brings their presence into our daily choices. It challenges us to think, would we act differently if they were still here? Would we make decisions we might later regret? Or would we choose to live with more thoughtfulness, kindness, and authenticity? Consider the many moments we experience when we feel torn between doing what's easy and doing what's right, when we face moral dilemmas, or when we must make choices that could affect others. Would we act with more compassion if we knew someone we loved was observing, holding space for our mistakes, and still offering their silent encouragement? The presence of the deceased, even if intangible, can serve as a powerful reminder to be the best version of ourselves, to act in ways that reflect the values they held dear and the love they shared with us. In these moments, it's not about perfection, but about honoring the essence of the relationship. What if the idea of the deceased still witnessing us becomes an anchor that helps us stay true to our principles, to rise above our impulses, and to live in a way that reflects our deepest values? Love, too, becomes even more meaningful with the thought that the ones we love are always present. Even if we can't see them, the bonds we share with others don't end with death. They only transform. If we believe that the deceased can still experience our love takes on a deeper, more profound significance. Love is not a finite resource that fades once someone passes. It transcends time and space, extending beyond the physical. The love we offer, the kindness we express, and the connections we nurture carry with them an eternal quality. Our words of affection, the gestures of support, and the moments of warmth shared with others are never truly lost. Even if our loved ones are no longer in physical form, the love we gave them continues to exist, echoing in the energy that connects us to them. This belief can shift our approach to grief as well. If the dead are not gone but are simply in a different state of being, perhaps it's easier to navigate the complexities of loss. Grief in this context becomes less about the permanent absence of someone we hold dear and more about adjusting to the shift in how we connect with them. It allows us to mourn, yes, but it also allows us to find comfort in the idea that the connection is still alive in some form. If the dead are still aware of us, perhaps we can continue to share our lives with them, even if it's not in the way we once did. The sense of loss may still be present, but there's a possibility for a new form of relationship, one based not on physical presence, but on spiritual connection. This perspective softens the edges of grief, making it less about severing ties and more about transforming the nature of the bond. It invites us to find new ways to honor our loved ones, through memories, rituals, or even through our actions, knowing that they may still be with us, offering their silent support and love from a different plane. In the realm of forgiveness, the belief that the dead can still see us challenges us to think about unresolved tensions and unhealed wounds. There may be situations where we carry the weight of resentment, guilt, or unfinished business with someone who has passed away. What if we imagine that they are still aware of us, watching, waiting for us to find peace and resolution? This can be a powerful motivator to release old grudges, to seek reconciliation, and to forgive, not just for the sake of the deceased, but for ourselves as well. Knowing that our actions toward others continue to have meaning even after death urges us to live with compassion and to heal relationships that may have been broken. If our loved ones can still witness our lives, we may want to honor them by doing the difficult work of forgiveness, not just for them, but for our own healing. Accountability is another area where the thought of the deceased being present has a profound impact. If our loved ones can still observe us, even from the other side, it's a powerful reminder that our choices matter, and that they influence not just our own lives, but the lives of others as well. Accountability isn't just about being responsible in a legal or moral sense. It's about living in alignment with the values we hold most dear. If we can carry the awareness that our choices are being witnessed, even by those who have crossed over, we may find that we take greater responsibility for our actions, striving to be the best versions of ourselves. This perspective also shifts our understanding of legacy. If the deceased are still connected to us, perhaps our legacy isn't just about how we are remembered in the physical world. Legacy becomes something that stretches across time, connecting generations in a way that transcends the boundaries of life and death. What if the way we live now, our choices, our actions, our words, are part of a larger, ongoing story that extends beyond our own lifetime? If our loved ones continue to witness us, our legacy is not just a matter of how we are remembered by others, but how we continue to impact those we leave behind, even after we're gone. This shifts the idea of legacy from something that's static, that ends when we die, to something dynamic, something that continues to evolve, shaped by the love, lessons, and memories we leave behind. Our legacy is no longer a closed chapter, but an ongoing story, one that extends into the future, where our loved ones, watching over us, continue to be part of our lives. The presence of the deceased as an ongoing part of our existence invites us to live with more awareness of the connections we share. It encourages us to live more intentionally, to make decisions based on the knowledge that our choices have meaning far beyond the moment. It asks us to live with love, integrity, and compassion, not just for the sake of the people around us, but also for those we can no longer see. It challenges us to live with an openness to the idea that death is not an end but a transformation that leaves the connections between us alive, resonating, and continuing to shape our lives, even from the other side. If the dead can see us, it suggests that our lives are woven into a larger, more expansive tapestry. A tapestry that stretches beyond the boundaries of time, beyond the physical, and into the eternal. And in that eternal connection, we are never truly alone. In the quiet moments of contemplation, death often appears as an end, a final, irreversible goodbye. The weight of this thought can be overwhelming, especially when we lose someone dear to us. We experience the pain of separation, the sense of an emptiness left behind, and the longing for what is no longer physically present. But what if this view of death as a permanent end is incomplete? What if, instead of a door slamming shut, death is actually a doorway, an opening to a new realm, a continuation of the journey of the soul rather than its disappearance? The idea of death as a doorway, rather than a finality, offers profound comfort and understanding. It suggests that death is not a barrier but a transition, a passage into a different state of being. When we lose someone, we may think of them as having disappeared, as if they have been erased from existence. But in this alternative view, the soul simply shifts from one form of existence to another, transcending the boundaries of the physical world. Instead of vanishing, the soul evolves, continuing on its journey in a new dimension, one that is beyond our perception. Death, in this sense, is not a disappearance. It is a transformation, a shift into a greater, more expansive reality. One of the most comforting aspects of this perspective is the idea that our loved ones are not truly gone. Instead, they have moved into a different realm, where they can continue to exist, and their presence can still be felt by those who remain. The bond we share with those we love does not end with their physical death, but continues in ways that we may not fully understand. Just as the soul is eternal, so too is the love we share. This love transcends the limitations of time and space, allowing us to remain connected with those we've lost, even when they are no longer physically present. The deceased are not separated from us forever. They simply reside in a different state, a place where they can continue their own journey and, in some cases, remain close enough to offer guidance, protection, and love to those they left behind. The ongoing journey of the soul is a concept that many spiritual traditions embrace, from the idea of reincarnation to the belief in an eternal soul that continues to evolve and grow. There is a common thread that runs through the world's spiritual teachings. The soul is on a journey that doesn't end with death. The soul's evolution is a continuous process, and death is just one phase in a much larger cycle. For many, this journey involves learning, growing, and connecting with others across lifetimes, with the ultimate goal of reaching a state of enlightenment or unity with the divine. In this context, death is not an end but an essential part of the soul's journey. It is a passage that allows the soul to move to a higher state of consciousness, one that is beyond the constraints of the physical world. This perspective invites us to see death not as something to fear, but as a natural and necessary part of the soul's progression. The soul may leave the physical body, but its essence remains, evolving and growing in ways that we cannot always perceive. The idea of death as a doorway opens up the possibility that there is more to life and existence than we can fully understand. It offers the hope that, even after we lose someone we love, their journey continues, just as ours does. One of the most profound ways to consider this perspective is to reflect on the idea of watchers, the souls of those who have passed, who continue to observe, guide, and support those still living. In many spiritual traditions, it is believed that the deceased do not vanish completely, but remain present in some form, watching over their loved ones, offering their wisdom and providing comfort from the other side. This concept is not limited to just those we are closely connected to. It extends to all souls who have transitioned into the afterlife. These souls, acting as watchers, are part of a larger spiritual ecosystem, helping guide and protect the living while continuing their own journey of growth and evolution. The idea of watchers offers a comforting thought. We are never truly alone, even in our grief. Our loved ones, though no longer in physical form, are still with us in some way. They are part of the ongoing journey of the soul, offering their presence and guidance from beyond the veil. This belief provides a sense of continuity, reminding us that death is not the end of a relationship, but the transformation of it into something different, something eternal. The bond of love remains, and those we love continue to watch over us, not as distant figures, but as integral parts of our spiritual journey. The journey of the soul is eternal, and as Edgar Cayce once said, the soul is ever seeking its purpose and ever moving toward its fulfillment. These words speak to the essence of what it means to be human, to grow, to evolve, and to seek meaning in our lives. Death is simply another chapter in the soul's quest for fulfillment, a transition that allows the soul to continue its journey toward understanding, growth, and enlightenment. In this sense, death is not a loss but a transformation, a shift from one form of existence to another, allowing the soul to move closer to its ultimate purpose. This belief in the ongoing journey of the soul also invites us to live with a deeper sense of purpose and intentionality. If the soul is eternal, and our loved ones continue on their journey even after death, then it stands to reason that we, too, are part of a much larger spiritual process. Our lives are not isolated events, but interconnected with the journeys of those who have passed and those who will come after us. The choices we make, the love we give, and the lessons we learn are all part of a greater unfolding of consciousness, a process that continues beyond the confines of our earthly existence. This idea also shifts our perspective on the concept of legacy. If death is a doorway and the soul's journey continues, then our legacy is not just about what we leave behind in the physical world. Our legacy is not limited to the material possessions we accumulate or the accomplishments we achieve. Instead, our legacy is the energy we leave behind, the love we give, and the connections we foster. Our legacy is the spiritual imprint we make on the world, one that continues to ripple through time, touching the lives of those who remain. This understanding of legacy reminds us that the impact we have on others, and the love we share, extends far beyond our physical lifetime. As we reflect on the eternal nature of the soul and the ongoing journey of those who have passed, it is important to remember that death, in its deepest sense, is not a disappearance, but a doorway. The soul moves through it, continuing its evolution and maintaining its connections with the living. Our loved ones, though no longer physically present, are still with us, offering their love, wisdom, and guidance. We are never truly alone, even in our grief. The idea that death is not an ending but a transition offers profound comfort and hope. It allows us to see the journey of the soul as a continuous unfolding process, one that does not end with death but continues on in ways that are beyond our understanding. It challenges us to embrace life, to live with purpose and love, knowing that the relationships we forge, the bonds we share, and the love we give transcend the boundaries of time and space. So, the question becomes, what if you were never really alone? What if the love you've shared, the relationships you've built, and the people you've lost are still with you in some form, still watching, still guiding, still part of your journey? How might this belief shift the way you live, the way you approach your own life, and the way you face the inevitable transition of death? Perhaps, in knowing that death is not an end but a doorway, you can live with a renewed sense of peace, purpose, and connection. Perhaps, in that knowledge, you can embrace the eternal nature of love and consciousness and step forward into the unknown with a heart full of trust and hope.